My name is Erica Nunn-Kinyas, and I'm the Ransom Center's Associate Director of Exhibitions and Public Programs. And I'm delighted to welcome you all here tonight as we celebrate the recent publication of Lisa Olstein's Distinguished Office of Echoes. Congratulations. I would like to also extend a special thank you to Ransom Center members, our special guests, our amazing volunteers that you met when you first walked in, to Annalisa and Doug Newell for their support tonight as well. We are especially appreciative of our program co-sponsor tonight, the Texas Book Festival. Thank you very much. And just a reminder that we will have copies of Lisa's books for sale tonight, and we hope that you'll join us for a book signing and reception after tonight's program. I'd like now to introduce Dahlia Ziem from the Texas Book Festival, who will introduce Lisa and our moderator, Elizabeth McCracken, this evening. So, Dahlia.
Hello. Thank you to the Harry Ransom Center for your partnership, and to Steve and Erica and Lois and Grace and the wonderful team here. Together, we hosted a book launch for Peniel Joseph earlier this year for his book Freedom Season, and here we are tonight welcoming the arrival of another beautiful book, Distinguished Office of Echoes by Lisa Olstein. We'll continue this fun tradition of celebrating new books together by co-hosting the launch of Elizabeth McCracken's A Long Game on December 4th, and we hope you will join us then as well. Speaking of Elizabeth McCracken, I'm so thrilled to welcome her as Lisa's conversation partner tonight. Elizabeth is the author of 4 novels, 3 collections of short stories, and a memoir. Her stories have won 3 Pushcart Prizes, 2 National Magazine Awards, and have appeared in 5 editions of the Best American Short Stories and on 3 episodes of Selected Shorts. A Long Game, Notes on Writing Fiction will be published in December. Tonight we have the honor of hearing and seeing new work by the very talented Lisa Olstein. Lisa is the author of 6 poetry collections: Radio Crackling, Radio Gone, Lost Alphabet, Little Stranger, Late Empire, Dream Apartment, and of course the newly published Distinguished Office of Echoes. Her nonfiction includes Pain Studies, a book-length lyric essay on the intersection of pain, perception, and language, and Climate, an exchange of epistolary essays co-written with Julie Carr. She is the lyricist for the rock band Cold Satellite, fronted by Jeffrey Foucault. She's so cool. And this year, an adaptation of Lost Alphabet for voice, 5 musicians, and electronics by composer Jean-Louis Tahara, premiered at Ensemble Face. Lisa's honors include a John S. Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship, Pushcart Prize, Lannan Writing Residency, Hayden Carruth Award, Writers League of Texas Discovery Book Award, and Sustainable Arts Foundation Award. She is the Ellen Clayton Garwood Centennial Professor of Creative Writing at the University of Texas at Austin, where she teaches in the New Writers Project and Michener Center for Writers MFA programs. Please join me in welcoming Lisa for a reading, and then she will be joined by Elizabeth shortly after that.
Hi, everybody. Is this thing on? Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the Ransom Center, Steve Ennis, Erica Nunn-Kinyas, to the Texas Book Festival, Dahlia, the staffs of both of these extraordinary organizations. I feel so lucky to be affiliated with them, to share a hometown with them. They're really treasures. Make art, share art is a mantra/maxim I've been sort of leaning into lately. And I'm so happy to share this art that I made with so many members of my community. So thank you so much for being here. Special thanks to Carrie Fountain for being the connector of this event, and to Rob Krosno, who helped me navigate what is called institutional support. which was essential to the publication needs of this particular volume. And of course, thank you to Elizabeth McCracken for joining me tonight and in so many other adventures. So Distinguished Office of Echoes is the product of a very intimate, tactile, embodied, weirdly devotional, solitary, approximately 16-year-long adventure. And it was also a collaboration with these 150-ish year old texts. So it was a little feral. Maybe we'll talk about that later. It was very devotional, it was very private. And also it felt like it was really in conversation. And I hope that maybe the book that came from it will offer that to a reader. Tonight, though, I'm hoping it might feel a little bit like a short film, interspersed with some conversation with one of my favorite people to talk to. So this first poem is called Near and Distant Regions. Its source text is Hutchinson's Physiology and Hygiene by Joseph Hutchinson, published in 1876, a prototypical medical textbook. Shall we open our rooms to the night air? The hours a cluster of geranium flowers, breathing snakes. Here the air fits like the lid of a box and closes. Occasionally it does not close in time, and we discover something has gone wrong, unwelcome intruder. Now the approach of disease calls according to its wont. With needles or a sharp knife, you are introduced into a new realm, a world of little things as vast as the starry firmament, which the astronomer nightly scans. At first, you feel strange in this new confidence. The standard authorities, the rate of progress, fondness, pleasure, no more completely known. Fix the eye upon a red wafer upon a white ground, and green takes its place. Red ray, green accident. And then a cherry tree full of ripe fruit will seem the same color in every part, the color of a signal. The view moves out over a constant flow of tears, always adjusting itself to distances, but may become inconvenienced by an overflow upon the face before it can escape. The successive points of departure at regular intervals along the course of leaving by means of branches, the white variety or in glistening, silvery bundles, from one to the other, one to the other. Communicate with the near and distant regions of the body under their control, like so many highways over which messages go and return. A ray of light, for example, falling. Stationed at the gate, invisible enemies grow from the margin, design their mechanism, scent their prey, find, it is true, this bearing, these furrows are divided into hemispheres of gray and gray, around which a delicate network is arranged, sufficient to maintain the appetite to cleave and feed. Walking, sitting, and other acts of daily life become automatic. The dodging motion of the recruit when the first cannonball passes over his head. The balancing of 1,000 acts performed with great precision that have been necessary to carry his body from one point to another along a narrow ledge. By this beautiful provision, the mind is released from the charge of the ordinary, laughing, also sobbing, from habit. The mind is of the something has gone wrong. Each wave is a chain of names perfectly arranged. The mallet hangs between membranes. The chain swings in the air. There, which air? The air upon which forms the atmosphere. Hollow chamber in which the remarkable lyre floats, sonorous impression upon a spiral shelf, destined to be conveyed to the distinguished office of echoes. Like reason, when it pours through a broken window, tends to demand a consequence, a hearing into the design of being so held. Through this window, then, the wave arrives at last conducted, the hardness of its walls within reach, the cold, familiar sound. An escape pipe upon a piano string struck, ascending as in a balloon, descending as in a diving bell. After the battle, crowded into a cavern during a stormy night confined, morning undergoes its passage from scarlet to vermilion, brighter than blood, and the air then is a sort of food. And born in mind, the morsel is cut and called near. We have seen how quickly pale turns bright, drop by drop, until finally its wants are met, its losses made good, swallowed down, let in by the gatekeeper which guards the entrance. In they glide, one upon the other, with a secret to keep. Caught between, held in place, the body, like flint, is capable of striking fire when the body requires. Something has. This spark is enveloped on all sides by a vast ocean of air. And as in the air a fish may be drowned as certainly as a mouse in water, supply is not a simple element, but a chemist of the atmosphere, its power to combust. In that case, distance is the agent of this mysterious force, this theory of light, thrown into every luminous body moving in waves. But remembering is the audition by which we are made elastic, smooth water set in motion. Regard the heart. The heart carries the dark to the most remote regions. The dark that is dazzling, the point of entry, all blind spot, and then gradually the distance from a certain distance will disappear.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Let me just get prepared.
All right.
I've got my mic. I'm not an old pro. That was beautiful. And this book is so beautiful, which I'm sitting upon. It's good. For all sorts of purposes. Makes short people taller. I wrote a little intro that I was trying to decide whether it was weirder to talk about you in the third person or to say really lovely things to you, to your face. I don't have it in this book.
Is it? Where is it? There it is.
I'm sitting on it. It didn't make this short person that much taller this time. It's not as good as the book. And I decided I would rather say it to you.
Oh boy.
I would like to say, not in a creepy way.
How much eye contact?
Not that much. Scooch over. And I want to say it's a great pleasure to talk to my dear friend Lisa about this extraordinary book. I brought it into my fiction workshop today and passed it around. I'd forgot that everybody looked at it and was astonished at just how beautiful the pages are. I forgot to tell them to smell it, because the book smells really good as well. It's just an extraordinary object. Every aspect of the work and book is beautiful. And one of the things that I love about your work is I feel that you are a writer who reinvents what you're trying to do with each book. And each volume, is it creepy yet? Each volume, you look a little uncomfortable. Each volume is a different kind of art in a way that I really admire. Maybe I think sort of every book is wrestling with a different conundrum. And whether it's a narrative about a fictional lepidopterist, it's in Lost Alphabet, or exploring the intersection and terrible dreamlike world with a resonant world of dreams, as in Dream Apartment, or trying to describe the ineffable, which I feel like that's part of your project with every book, is trying to describe the indescribable. But the interior world of pain and pain studies, talking over what it means to live in a shifting climate, as in Climate. The world of Lisa's work is both dark and shot full of light. And that light is always shifting. This gorgeous new book, as you have seen, is full of both literal darkness and literal lightness, literal black and literal white, as well as full of the mystery that's in all of Lisa's work. And I always feel like you're never trying to solve the mystery, you're only trying to describe it. I was going to say limbs, but that's in the poetry way, L-I-M-N-S. But then I thought, I'm not a poet, I can't get away with it. It was really beautiful to hear you read from these pages. This isn't a question I have down, but I wonder how does it feel to be reading at the podium and seeing everybody looking up at the images instead of at you?
Delightful. Yeah, I'm not in it for the gaze. And also I love immersive experiences. And so if everyone was like looking at their phone, that might feel bad. But the idea that the work provides a third thing that we kind of can immerse in together is really nice. This is just the second time I've done it, so it's a brand new experience. But so far, I give it a thumbs up.
It was. I found it very moving to be in the audience of people listening and then looking and having, immersiveness. There's a wonderful process essay at the back of this book, and one of the things that you talk about is finding the 3 source books in favorite used bookstores. Somehow that favorite used bookstores feels very important. And sort of feeling a thrum when you looked at them, not knowing how you would use them, but knowing, I think it says something like you knew that you would use them in the same way that when you're hungry, you know that you need to eat. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that thrum, both generally, how you feel it when you write, but specifically for this book.
Yeah, it's that in terms of finding the books, and these are they're probably the 2 bookstores I've been in most in the world. And I, like many of us, seek out those strange shelves where those, you don't know what you'll find in terms of the old books. And there was no directing the process. It was like a process of receiving. So just you crack open lots of books. There's lots of them that are sort of interesting, maybe sort of, others instantly as dull as pulp, But yeah, there was an instant sense of sort of energy with these books, and I felt it I suppose, between me and the book, if you will. But I felt it within the book in terms of the dynamic and the balance between their words and images. And it isn't to say, I mean, each book is totally different, and each is absolutely dry. They're reference books. So on the one hand, they are dry repositories of knowledge, knowledge-sharing artifacts. And they have this extraordinary liveliness, at least for me, between their jargon and the sort of traces. They're trying so hard to be not stylized. And of course, they appear stylized because they're old. But also, they're doing that type of reference book nonfiction, like, this is just the truth. This is just the facts. I'm just a neutral conveyor of facts. But style and rhetorical flourish and the sort of sounds and magics of jargon are inevitable. And so there was just something in each of these that clicked for me in particular between the sort of vibrations between the language and the images. And it did feel like this externalization of something that I'm always seeking and is the place from which the only place from which I can work, which is a felt sense of fascination that feels a little bit unlike ordinary reality, a sense of language being charged, of my own sense of it, my own perception, eye, ear, meaning, being somehow heightened. And so that's always what I'm after, and in this case, it was this sort of externalization of what is otherwise a more deeply internal or interior process.
And when did you know that you were going to collage and erase and make them into something physical?
You know, the first one I found was the medical textbook, and it was one of the very first times I tried to write after having a child. And I think there was something in me that just knew I needed the externalization of the process. I wasn't ready or able to kind of write in a more ordinary way at the time. And I was given the freedom of a couple of days to myself, and I sort of pulled out this book, and I don't remember kind of deciding. I think I just knew once I had found the book. I didn't want to interpret the books. I didn't want to, I think there are some works of erasure like Voyager by Srikanth Reddy. There's no trace in the book other than in the endnotes that it was based on a process of erasure. And I love some work that is like that, and I love some other work that's collage or erasure based that you know instantly. I think for whatever reason, I knew that's how I wanted to work with the books because it seemed like the only way to access that thrum, to preserve it, but to transform it. So it was fitful. I think I messed around for a few days and then had to pack it all up in a box and put it away. And then it was some years later that I discovered the next book, and I had a similar sort of very episodic engagement that was too short, but was a taste and the beginning of the development of a methodology of some sort. I tried black ink. I knew I hated it. I thought about, could I create drafts to practice on, and I realized no, it had to be like a high wire act. I had to interact with the page directly and risk losing it if I messed it up, that kind of thing. So I had these episodes of finding books, of diving into them really briefly, and then sort of it was always humming in the background until I sort of had the right amount of time.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with visual art in general? I know that you're the child of a visual artist, and whether you had tried your hand at it before.
Not in any real serious way. I did art in, high school. I was lucky enough to go to a small art school in Greece for a couple of years during sort of as a interlude in the middle of college. And I was focusing on poetry and photography being the only visual art that I ever really studied seriously or practiced seriously. But it was also a place that made you do figure drawing every morning, and we carved marble whether we wanted to or not. So those were very dabbling kinds of forays. But I'm a great lover of visual art, and I'm also a great believer, at least for me, in sort of the utility of other genres, other art forms being analogous to the one that I practice the most or am devoted to, and being informed by what's tone, what's touch, what's frame, what's process, what are the traces of process, what do they look like in a painting versus a watercolor versus a sculpture versus a film, et cetera.
Yeah, and again, you write about this, the process essay is lovely, and you talk about the physical process of doing it. And I know that, for instance, you've recently taken up pottery. You are a serious bread baker. You ride horses. You have this particular connection to the physical. The 3 books that you've taken are all about the physical. A book about anatomy, a book about war, and a book about sea life. Trying to figure out what my clever question here, tying it all together, is. But I'm interested both in what doing a physical process brings to your practice as a poet, and also what is beguiling about making poetry out of the physical.
I really love to lose myself in a process. I care about the product. I eat the bread. I want to use the mug. But what I really love is the immersive process, and that it requires the sustained attention that is in and of itself transformative, and the sense of journey. I realized I'd like everyone to know that I started baking sourdough before the pandemic, like 9-10 years before. But a thought I had about it during the pandemic, when we were all very stuck and not moving around, was that it created the arc of a journey across a day. It had these way stations. It was like a train coming into different stations along the way from the beginning to the end. And I think there's something, the horseback riding is different. That's just me wanting to exceed my body. But the ceramics and the bread making and a process like this are about attempting to kind of immerse or submerge in an embodied practice or process that feels like a journey that takes time, and that allows you to, I don't know, live outside yourself, deeper inside yourself, something like that. Really with your medium.
You're a brilliant knitter, too. I wish I was wearing the shawl that you made me. And it occurs to me that, like, knitting is a record of a narrative, basically.
Yeah. It's also an excuse to watch TV.
Yeah, it's also good. You can't do that while writing poetry.
No, not really.
Just looking at our time. So you talk about following the thrum, being a little feral as you put together things. Now, do you apply your intellect to poetry at some point, or do you want to? Sorry, I know you do. Famously, you do it for a living. But is there a process where suddenly you're like, okay, I have this on the page now, and now I need to step back and try to shape it?
Yeah, and I think, we're all idiosyncratic about this. For me, I really need to keep my critical gaze separate from that thrum space or that generative flow space. I try not to edit myself as I go. I feel like I try not to get in the way with my ideas or intentions or potentially even past experience, at least on a conscious level. I want to be, and that's the part I think that feels feral. If I can get in it, I lose track of time. I don't have any intentions. I'm just sort of like digging around, following threads, whatever the metaphor works. And then it isn't that I think the intellectual or critical or revision-based processes are lesser. Quite the opposite. I consider them equally creative, just at a different stage of the process. And to me, those are another place where we really collaborate with our medium, whatever it is, because we get to look at what we've made and how it exceeds whatever conscious intentions we might have had just by virtue of being. I mean, language is full of meanings we intended one, it also has three others. We might be following the music and we're not even paying attention to the way an idea is echoing. So for me, it's an immersive, attempted unself-conscious, very private kind of mucking around, making space, and then with a different mindset, but again, a collaborative feeling with my medium. What is it showing me that I wouldn't have known to try for? And then bringing the intellect, bringing experience, bringing the sort of like hard earned, and one is always trying to earn the ability to see what one has made and what it could become. What do you want to nudge it towards? What is revealing itself but needs to be revealed more? That is a really important, and again, I would say really creative part of the process, just at a later stage.
When I think of your work as melancholy, but often quite funny. My favorite
Thank you.
image on this is the "something has gone wrong," which I find really sad and really funny at the same time. And I wonder whether that's one of the things that comes in the less conscious part, or
If the sad part or the funny part?
no, the funny part.
I
Or
think
both.
I think both.
Yeah.
And I think both and, like, I think sometimes the wryness or the melancholy, like either of those things could be in that original urge kind of space, and they could also be things that I recognize as like latent energies or potentials that then I want to bring further to the fore, maybe.
Do you feel like working with the images is going to change your poetry in the future? Are things you feel like you've learned from working with the images? I'm also interested whether you think of these poems as existing only with the images, or whether they have a linguistic life away from the images.
I mean, it was really important to me that they hold up. So I did at certain points sort of check the poetry part, you know, and sort of type them out, and it was for thematic development and cogency of thought. But I don't think I'd ever want to like publish the words without the images,
Right.
for instance. To me, they're one thing.
They seem almost, and I mean this as a high compliment, like rebus adjacent. There's something, like there were rebuses, you know, little sentences made out of words that were, I think, in the Boston Globe when I was a kid. Yeah, and that there'd be like I for the first person pronoun.
Yeah. I feel like the relationship, the juxtaposition, or the interplay between the words and the images, or lack of, you know, the absences sort of made present in the whited out space or the cutaway space, that's part of the poem.
Yeah. When you are writing without images, are you concentrating always on, it's one of the things that always seems to me to be so interesting about poetry, and very separate from fiction, is that it is a visual medium, sort of immediately. There's some of it in fiction, but not as much.
Yeah, no, the sort of sculptural level, the visual input of the poem is, I like to lean back and squint at it. Yeah.
I know you have another reading. Do you want to give the reading and I can ask you a couple more questions and then throw to the audience?
Perfect. So this next poem is called War With, and its source text is a 1903 primer called Greek History for Young Readers by Alice Zimmerman. In this little book, the heroes are not some girls who love the past. Long ago, there lived islands and shores, little fragments. The sea rose and fell, and lines of animals and men. Not kingdom, but collection, bound together by a friendly feeling between oceans. Their songs. The fable, the worship, the curse on the house, the sad plight of the poor, the hero founder, he becomes tyrant. He asks for a bodyguard. He is expelled and returns. He returns. He resolves. They fall into his hands. A bridge of boats is made, ships built with money. The command is given, peace with, war with. Two enemies stopped to quarrel. The western gate drew up on troops well drilled. The finest armies massed after the fashion, cavalry on the left wing, troops on the right. Families, according to those days, now permanently fixed, might rise or sink and sink. Perhaps friendship could never be lasting. Uncertain whether to sail further or rest, your ships will beseech you, deliver us, and we will go, return home, not risk a second at sea. Shelter seemed to be wherever the battle was. At last, hope, panic, flight, never stop running. Nor had the part played by been the part played in. War sided with after, changed sides, and was first. Watch his army cross from burnt strewn into prayed to. No mishap cast the sea, the cavalry, cattle, the first, then the rest, in their appointed order, and the last at last claimed under. And as though, and even worse, and at last, and at last. 5 years, 30 years, quarrel, quarrel, complaints. Sparta promises to help. Athens refuses the offer. Sparta sends an army. Her troops are sent back. Athens asks Sparta for help. The Spartans arrive too late. Siege and fall. Despair at. Surrender of. In legend, the fleet sails, the expedition, the exiles, they reach the sea. In history, the story ends in a fresh war. Lovingly, the river pours its waters into the sea, of which we know very little, no one passing through to tell us anything. In the old days, who slew the lion was home in their eyes, shepherd of hope and dream. But they found he could not work miracles after all, any worth their while. Little monarch, subject to so vast an empire of rivers. Ill-fated king, rivers deliver the most wonderful walls. At last, a promise, an empire, too good to throw away.
It was so lovely to just listen to that,
Oh.
having read it in the book to get another angle on it. I'm usually not interested in asking people about autobiography and their work. But in taking these source books, texts, I'm interested if you were surprised by the ways in which they spoke to your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, wherever we go, there we are kind of thing. I think that interestingly, at a certain point, I had to realize that the narrative that was emerging out of each one was deeply personal, and that actually was was so personal that I had to come from the outside to even approach it. I wasn't able or interested or whatever in writing it more directly. So whether it's a trick of the mind, this composition process was one of searching and of recognizing sort of words that had a magnetic pull or phrases that did, and the dynamics between the images, all that stuff. But it was a sense of like dousing for water or panning for gold. I could have the illusion that it was outside of me and I was finding it, even though in a sense that's always what we're doing, right? But it was such a embodied externalization of that. And then, of course, it's still me writing it, and each one circles something that I hope transcends whatever the exact personal circumstance was that made me interested in that thing, but each one does have at its heart a sort of deeply personal and actually fraught engagement. The medical textbook and the sort of exploration of the eerie dislocations of illness, it has a lot to do with experience that I have in the kingdom of the ill. The first one that I didn't read from tonight, The Sea Creatures, is like this incredible magnification of the transformation at the moment of death and the bewildered searching of the bereaved that I started in the immediate aftermath of a friend's sudden and very traumatic death. And the Greek history one was written while existing with news that was unavoidable of a climate-driven crisis that was unfolding very close to where I had lived when I had gone to that art school and stayed on for a while. And so there was this strange sense of being very intimate with a landscape across which all this history had been written, was still visible, and then this incredibly contemporary and awful, desperate history was unfolding in the moment.
Yeah, so interesting. Can you describe just a little bit of your physical process? Did you take the books apart? Did you spread things around? Did it vary from poem to poem?
I destroyed those books. I leafed through them whole, and I selected pages, and once a page was selected, I tore it from the binding, and then it sort of existed apart from the book. I worked on them one at a time, but I ended up using similar techniques for them all. So I had an elaborate set of procedural rules, most of which I don't actually remember that well. So some of them were about technique. So there was, I never used, scissors, no. Black ink, no. White watercolor paint, yes. I wanted multiple layers, so hopefully it's visible in some of the examples of the work outside, but layering and frame felt really important. So often, even if it just looks like a border and a few words and some space, that's probably 4 pages to create that. There's some sort of depth and overlay and palimpsestness involved in the process. So yeah, I would choose pages, sometimes a little run of pages. Sometimes I would kind of feel into a connection that was, they were 75 pages apart, who knew? But words would connect or images would connect. And so some of them were selected for text and some were selected for image. And then I sort of thought of them as congregations, that they kind of joined together into little runs that made sense to me. Some of the rules, again, there were the technique choices, but also I didn't want to turn it into refrigerator magnet poetry. I didn't want to atomize the text and just make it any language at all. I wanted to retain some of the specified jargon and also something of the felt sensibility, those rhetorical styles of the original authors. At the same time, I didn't want to lean on that too much. So I didn't let myself select for single words, hardly at all. But I also limited how many consecutive words I could use because I didn't want to borrow whole sentences. So there was like a middle path somewhere in there, mostly short phrases that then allowed themselves, you put any words together, they mean something. And so the sort of springing up of meanings, and so there was a lot of selection, cutting out, and then before gluing down, a lot of shuffling and moving around, joining with image, deciding on how to treat the absences, the presences. And then eventually I would compose it, and once I was sure, I would glue it down. It needed a backing, it was too fragile. So they were put onto like a watercolor paper backing.
And how much collaboration did you do with your press about how the physical book was going to look?
Quite a bit. It was a really interesting process, a lot of learning curves. It turns out it's really hard to translate these like works on paper. They had to into photographs that are a good representation, and then those photographs have to be translated into a book design program, which then has to be translated, and this proved the hardest, into ink and paper coming off of a printing press. They were wonderfully supportive, and they set me and the book designer / art director free. And so ordinarily they're sort of intermediaries, and you don't talk to the book designer that much so that you don't, I don't know, bother them too much with your dumb book design ideas. But in this case, they sent us off to make this happen together, which was wonderful. Phil Kovacevic is an incredibly talented art director, book designer. So it was wonderful, but it was also really scary because being such a novice or being so ignorant of these processes, I didn't know how difficult it would be in a sense, and I felt pretty vulnerable and helpless while at the same time having really strong feelings about what needed to come through. So I had to, of course, accept that they were not going to look exactly like the objects that I have a stack of 93 of. But I needed it to get close enough. And it was also interesting, the very first round of design kind of concepts that Phil came up with, he actually was going for more of a facsimile kind of vibe. So he created these covers that were meant to look like an old book from that time. I had sent him photographs of the source book because he'd asked. And it wasn't until I saw those that I realized that I really strongly did not want that aesthetic. I really wanted actually sort of the opposite, this very sort of clean, contemporary surround to this old material. I wasn't trying to fake it out. I wasn't trying to make it look like it was an old book. I wanted it to be a contemporary interaction and collaboration with archival materials. So.
How do you feel about the finished object?
Relieved.
It's so beautiful. I have, no, I'm not going to ask this last question.
No?
Because I'm going to throw it to the audience.
All right.
And if, it's 5 of, does anybody have any questions? There you are. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, do you see yourself returning to your source books for future projects?
I don't think, so the question was, do I see myself returning to these source books? I don't think these books, I think they've had it. And I mean, I really enjoyed it. I would love to imagine something that's akin to it. I don't know if I would ever kind of go back and try to do the same thing with new books. Maybe.
You do tend not to.
So far, I have tended not to.
What's happened to the remains of these books? Are they in an honored place?
They live in a box. Yeah.
Other questions?
Did you read all the books, or did you solely just have whatever inspired you come to you?
I touched the books all over. I probably touched every page of all the books. I did not read every word of those pages. I certainly didn't read through them consecutively. I would kind of go in and out of real reading or skimming or flipping. There was a lot of staring. But it wasn't like, I will read these books, metabolize them, and then create output. It was a much more dynamic and loose process. Yeah, they're not an interpretation, if you will.
Yeah, these are so cool and beautiful, and they look to me you're sort of halfway between poem and painting, and I'm just wondering, do you see yourself going further toward painting, like since your mom's a painter? And then my second half of that question is, what did your mom have to say about that?
My mom likes it, and I'm not a painter at all. I really enjoyed making white lines out of paint. And I would love, I do find myself really interested in bringing tactile elements, like something that's more recent is I've been using silk embroidery thread to alter maps. So I'm really interested in sort of hybrid techniques and bringing tactile elements to language-based art, but who knows? Who knows?
It feels all, I mean, I'm just thinking that you collect nests.
I do.
This is a kind of weaving. I know that some of your pottery is weaving. The lines feel like knitting as well. And you talk about following a thread to whatever minotaur you might find in the book.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. That wasn't a question, it was just a comment. More of a comment. Terrible in a moderator.
Did you ever think about the authors of these books? Did you connect with them at all and think about them? Because you're using their words, and some of their words are really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of love for these books and, in a sense, for these authors. I wasn't trying to channel them. I didn't, call their spirits or anything. And I'm not making light of that. It just wasn't what I did. I felt, I think, a certain freedom in how old the books were and in how they were as reference books. They were meant for everyone, and they were meant for use. And a big part of the way that I was connecting with them was recognizing, on the one hand, they're antiquated, they're sometimes deeply offensive to our way of understanding things now. Like, read a prototypical medical textbook about the woman's body, doesn't hold up great on a certain level. At the same time, each one is like a portrait of the pursuit of knowledge, and that is evergreen, right? And that is, I think, almost always earnest, and felt completely earnest in these books. So I felt an enormous amount of respect, even though I was destroying the books and repurposing them. People have a lot of feelings about erasure. I think somehow we have fewer fraught feelings about collage. So let's call them collages. How are we on time? Are we good? One more?
I was wondering if the books distracted you in any way from your project at any point, and maybe you just gave us an example of this. And if the books did distract you from your project, how you dealt with the distraction.
I mean, they were the project, so they didn't distract me. And they were like these companions the whole time. So I would kind of pick them up, take from them, move to other phases of the project, but they were always there. They felt like animals in the room. And sometimes you're petting the cat, and sometimes the cat's asleep over there. That's how they felt. Yeah. I would love to chat more out there with food and drink and that kind of thing.
Thanks, Lisa. I could listen to you all night.
Thank you.